Today in Algebra 1, we started learning about two-step equations. This is a continuation of what we started learning a couple weeks ago about one-step equations. We're just adding in more steps now. So, two-step equations. Some things we need to remember before we get started. The first thing was we talked about our goal here, which was to isolate the variable, and that is still true. We still have that goal to isolate the variable. We talked about inverses. And I want you to recall that the inverse of add is subtract. The inverse of subtract is add. The inverse of multiply is divide. And the inverse of divide is multiply. Remember, inverse just means opposite. Remember the golden rule of algebra. Remember we talked about this. The golden rule is what you do to one side of the equation, you also must do to the other. So that's a very important thing to remember. And the last thing we want to add with two-step equations is there is an order to it, and it's the reverse of PEMDAS. So let's think about getting dressed in the morning. You get up, you put your undergarments on, you put your clothes on, you put your shoes on. If you did that in the wrong order, that'd be a problem. Then in the evening, when you get ready to change, you take your shoes off, your clothes off, etc. to get a shower, or however that pattern goes. Or if you think of wrapping a present and then unwrapping it, you take the bow off first, you take the card off, then you unwrap it, then you open the box. So you do opposite, right? So on two-step equations, we're going to go backwards, starting with we're going to do adding and subtracting, and then multiplying and dividing. We have several examples to look at, so let's get started with that. Number 1, 10 equals 6 minus 2x. Our variable is x. We want to get our variable by itself. Right now it's being multiplied by 2 and subtracted from 6. So we're going to go to the point furthest away from x, which is the 6. And it's positive, so to use the inverse to get rid of it, we're going to subtract 6 from both sides of the equal sign. This one will cancel, which is good. That was the point of doing it. 10 minus 6 is 4. And then on this side, I have negative 2x. Now it's just a one-step problem. Negative 2 is being multiplied by x. The opposite of multiply is divide. What I do to one, I do to the other. Those cancel, and x equals negative 2, because 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. Remember, a good way to check this would be to plug it back into the original equation. 6 minus 2, and then we'd plug in negative 2 right here. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, plus 6 is indeed 10. And you could always check it that way or using your calculator. Example number 2. If I have q divided by 15 minus 1/5 equals 3/5. I start by asking myself, what's my variable? In this case, it is q, and it's being divided by 15 and subtracted by 1/5. I start by doing my adding and subtracting inverses. So the opposite of negative 1/5 is positive 1/5 to both sides. And then I have q over 15. And I have 3/5 plus 1/5, which is 4/5. Now I have q being divided by 15. The opposite of divide is, of course, to multiply. And if we multiply 4 times 15 straight across, that'd be 60. 5 times 1 is 5. And 60 divided by 5 is 12. So q equals 12 is my final answer. Let's look at some more. Example number 3. 1.5 equals 1.2y minus 5.7. So let's look at some decimals. Again, what's happening to y is it's being multiplied and then subtracted. So to do the inverses, I'm going to start by adding 5.7 to both sides. 1.5 plus 5.7 is 7.2, and that's equal to 1.2y. Now I've got 1.2 being multiplied by y. The inverse would be to divide by 1.2. And y is equal to 6, because 7.2 divided by 1.2 is 6. Example number 4. N divided by 7 minus 2 equals 2. N is being divided by 7 and subtracted by 2. The opposite of subtract is add. And I have n divided by 7 equals Oh, sorry, I think I wrote the problem down wrong. Sorry. This should have been positive 2, so we were going to subtract 2 from both sides. Excuse me on that. Those would still cancel, and on this side, 2 minus 2 would be 0. Now, if I want to get n by itself, I'm going to multiply both sides by 7, because it was being divided, and 0 times 7 is 0, so n equals 0. The last thing I want to do with you is go over one word problem. We went over one more in class, but that seems a little excessive for you if you're watching this again, or if you missed it, you could probably get it with one example. In class, we also talked about Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King and about a score, because we talked about the speech 407 years ago. And then Martin Luther King said 5 years ago. Abraham Lincoln did something very cool. And so we talked about that in class, and if you're curious, I'll be happy to show you one of the many ways this could really be applied in life. For now, let's just try a word problem. So 7 less than twice a number. 7 less than twice a number equals 19. Okay, let's use the words to get an equation. 7 less than twice a number. Less than always means it comes second. So we have minus 7 from something. Twice a number would be 2 times the variable. So make the variable n, for example. 2n minus 7 equals 19. Then if I want to solve that, I'm going to add 7 to both sides. And 2n equals 26, because 19 plus 7 is 26. Divide both sides by 2, and n equals 13. Finally, your homework assignment is assignment number 8. And you can find assignment number 8 on page 96 of your textbook. And you're going to do numbers 1 through 7 and 24 to 26. That's 10 problems. If you have questions, definitely let me know, and I'll be happy to help.